First of all, I always thought that breast cancer was a white woman's disease. I didn't know that black women got breast cancer, and that was mainly because all the promotions featured white women. So I just thought, oh, black women don't get this. And then, lo and behold, I was diagnosed with stage 3 advanced breast cancer. I thought after that I finished with the IV and the chemo that I was going to go home. I didn't know I had to take additional not over-the-counter, but prescription drugs. And I went, and it was quite expensive. And I thought to myself, okay, what do poor people do? How do women that look like me, that is less fortunate than I am, how do they make it? How do they find the money to pay for this prescription, take care of their families, cover all their finances? That must be so difficult for them. And then I was at home one morning feeling, terrible after chemotherapy treatment. Couldn't get off the bed. It was terrible. And I thought to myself, okay, I don't want any other woman that looks like me to have to go through this alone. So when I get better, I'm going to do something about this. That started the journey of me and the Olive Branch of Hope.
The Olive Branch of Hope's office is situated on Indigenous land. This is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Wendat, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. The Olive Branch of Hope gratefully acknowledges these Indigenous nations for their guardianship of this land. The Olive Branch of Hope also recognizes stolen people from across the world who have inhabited this land by force. Slavery prior to and including the transatlantic slave trade continuing through modern-day human trafficking have brought Indigenous people from across the globe to care for this land. We acknowledge the truth of our Canadian history and commit ourselves to reconciliation, knowledge, and careful intention. I invite you to take a moment of silence. Feel free to use this moment for prayer, memory of a loved one, or to set an intention for your engagement on this space. Thank you for holding this moment of silence with me.
Thank you for holding this moment of silence with us. Here at HERstory, this is the place where we get to just be as visionary women who are climbing and scaling towers and mountains, moving and shaking, trailblazing, and all of it. And this is the place where we get to not have to wear all of the hats all at the same time. This is the place where we get to say, I'm actually not doing okay today. And that's where you'll find me, not really quite doing okay today, but showing up, because that's what we do and that's who we are. We're committed to the causes, and the cause that we are here to promote and celebrate this month is Women's HERstory Month. And in doing that, we are also here to stand with our many sisters with the Olive Branch of Hope. The Olive Branch of Hope has been delivering programming and support to women of African descent, African ancestry, who've developed breast cancer in Canada and throughout the Caribbean, and supporting women in the African diaspora for over 20 years. Started by 2 Caribbean immigrant women to Canada who themselves developed breast cancer and realized they could not find the supports that they needed, took it upon themselves to create space for women who look like them and sound like them who need that support. So we'll tell you a little bit more about how you can help us and how you can join the movement in supporting the Olive Branch of Hope later. But right now, I am really happy to introduce a lovely young lady that has been close to me and working with me for quite a few years. And it is, to me, it's great that on the day that I don't feel so great, that she's the one, because she's always been a source of light and happiness and love and support in my corner for many, many years. So welcome, Asantie Murrell. Hi, Asantie, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well, thank you. I'm sorry that you aren't doing well, but I know that we have that energy together, like you were speaking of. So I'm really excited to be here with you tonight.
Exactly. Yes, we get to fill the gaps. I think
Mhm.
that's we talk a lot about sisterhood and we talk about support, and it's
Mhm.
really good to get excited about support when things are great, right? But
Yeah.
it's in the moments when you're jumping in because somebody can't, or because they're stretched, or for whatever reason, the truth of support is really revealed in those harder, more difficult times. As I was saying your name just now, I realized I've not said your last name in such a long time.
Yeah, it's a familiarity, right?
Yeah.
So, yes.
Like strictly first names for a long time. So
First
um
day.
but yes, I'm really happy to be here with you. So what a lot of you guys don't know, so with our Her Story team, sometimes you'll see, some of us up front, you tend to see my face and hear my voice up front, but we're a much wider team. Asantie is one of our Her Story members that you may not see as often. She tends to be working in the background, making sure things go as smoothly as possible, and that we're supporting all of the interviewers and interviewees throughout this campaign, and so many other things, our social media. This is the brilliant mind behind a lot of it. So I
Yeah,
just have to bring you up a little bit. Yeah. So
thank you.
Asanti, tell us a bit about you. Tell us a bit about your path and what has brought you here.
Hi. Thank you. Yes, so I am Asanti, born and raised in Barbados, which is such a nice thing to say, given that the reason that we're here, and one of the founders, Leela, also from Barbados as well. And very, very unique way to contextualize everything, having that kind of Caribbean vantage point and perspective. But I have a background in, working with nonprofits, have background working in the private sector, now more so in the governmental sector. But I've had a wide range of experiences that have really brought me here. Met a lot of people, a lot of visionary women, such as yourself, such as those who have been here for the past 26 days. And I think that all of those experiences together have really, fine tuned where I think I see myself going, and have been with me thus far. So I'm really excited to be here and to, kind of be in that bulk of women who are considered visionary and excited for where, being here takes me. As you said, I'm one of the consultants and those working in the background for Her Story, and that has been a fabulous experience, just because telling others my story, hearing others' story is such a beautiful exchange, especially among women, especially among Black women. So I'm really excited for having landed here and where we go from here as well.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And Asanti and I, we go a bit further back than Her
Yeah.
Story. And I see you're sporting your shirt. I mean, I cringe at the logo now, but it was all I could do back in the day.
Yeah,
That was my best back then.
growth, right? So
Yeah,
we get to a
absolutely.
point where we're much
Yeah.
better. Me too. Coming back from this is a micro macro internship program, where we met as part of the flagship program for small enterprises for education and development, where we would have connected for the first time, and being part of an internship program that allowed me to get my first real look into what development was, what diplomacy was, lots of research. And it really, I would say, shaped a lot of what I'm doing now. Definitely what I went on to do academically and professionally. So it was a pleasure back in 2017 to have met you and had that experience, and continue to work with Seed as well, to bring educational and developmental opportunities to youth here in Barbados, and as we branch out to the rest of the Caribbean.
Yes, yes. And I mean, Asantie is glossing over, but what she did in those 6 weeks, and the project ended up being extended, but what
Mhm.
she and her partner would have been able to produce in that short space of time was just maybe just shy of miraculous. It was they were tasked with a pretty heavy outreach um project,
Mhm.
looking for the gaps in service delivery to youth, as far as youth development and education are concerned. And so you would have reached out to, I don't know, about 50
Yeah.
different organizations, maybe.
So many organizations. We wanted to spread it as wide as possible to get, different organizations and different perspectives that would have, just remotely touched the youth in Barbados, from sport to religious organizations, service organizations, other academic organizations. We really had a widespread, and it was great to see that quite a bit of the organizations and institutions that we reached out to were really receptive to, having us and to really contribute to what we were doing. I still remember my intern partner, Samuel, us running up and down to go to interviews and whatnot. It was really that experience that really showed how everybody and getting the stakeholders involved and getting people involved in what you're doing to have a really good scope and vision for where we wanted to go. And I think that, yeah, I think we did wrap it up pretty well, and how it was extended for us to go to, the United Nations organizations that we got to meet with. Super cool experience to meet with. I think it was about 5 of them. So it,
Yep.
it, it really culminated in something that was definitely worthwhile. And I know that it's an experience that neither I nor Samuel will forget.
Yes. And the UN, 5 UN organizations, and the minister of, I never remember the order, but it was family, culture, youth,
Youth
sports,
sport.
in
Yeah.
some order or another. Yeah.
Yeah.
But those four ministries for sure. And
Mhm.
we sat back and we watched, and we were extremely proud, not just of the final result, but just the attitude that both of you brought to the table. It was a challenge, right? It was a challenge, and you guys delivered. And this would have been basically your first consulting gig, right? Um, and so, really to be able to see that at that young age, we could create projects that would be as close to real life as possible, for you as young people, and give you real experiences. That was one of the things that really fueled us, because every year that we delivered that program was an absolute miracle. We never started January 1st, we were always broke, right? Like, we never started the year with money. And somehow we managed to produce the program and end it
Right.
off. And whatever we had left, we gave it to you guys in your graduation gifts. And then from September to December again, we were broke, right? So every year.
Yeah. I mean, you didn't feel it on my end or on our end. I can speak for that year to really have a quality experience in field work, because that's really what it was, us actually, getting out and doing what we needed to do to deliver on our project. But you didn't feel it, and I didn't find out until after I'm becoming more involved as an ambassador and then coordinator, that really it's a lot of work to
Yeah.
put on something like this, for how many, I can't remember how many of us it was, but
It was
it
25 in
truly,
your group. That was
yeah,
our
so it's
biggest
truly
group.
a
Yeah.
feat,
Yeah.
to really pull it off, and to
Yeah.
definitely give me a greater appreciation of what really goes into it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's what our visionary women throughout the month, you know, I think that's one of the challenges that we tend to have. We may know we need help, But because we can't actually quantify the magnitude of work that we produce, sometimes single handedly, right? It then makes it very difficult to say, actually, this is the kind of help that I need. It also causes us to maybe take for granted that what we know and the skill set we've developed and the pure fire and passion that we run
Right.
on is easily duplicatable. It's not. Right?
Yeah.
And so, in my space in nonprofit, one of the first things I'll hear from so many different nonprofit leaders is, oh, the board doesn't do this, and the board doesn't do that, and the board should do this, right? That's one of the biggest cries that we hear all across. And, my first thing is, well, have you invited the board, right? Maybe the board has tried to help, but we as visionary women, we are very hard people to help, right? Because all we think about is, I can get all these groceries upstairs in one shot, right? I don't have to come back. I don't have to ask for help. And so, really, that being a big part of the learning is allowing the exposure, allow people to peer into the back and see what it takes, allow them to have their own appreciation of it.
Yeah.
And then the more important piece is allow people of brilliant minds like Asantie to say, okay, I can take this part,
Right.
right? I think that maybe even after we open the door and allow people in, that's the hardest part, is to actually let it go and let someone run with, a chunk of whatever the vision is that we're delivering to the world. But
Yeah.
on that topic, since we've
Mhm.
segued, what do you think is the importance of vision?
Yeah, I think vision is very important from a directional standpoint. I think that when we're progressing and when we're doing things and we're being active, it's like, we're getting somewhere, but where are we actually going? It doesn't matter how fast you're going, sorry, if you're not going towards what it is that you really want to achieve. And I think that having a vision gives you that direction and really narrows the path a bit to get to what goal you want to achieve, to get to what really is going to set your heart ablaze, or to really give you that fulfillment. And if you believe that it's something like big and audacious, like we've spoken of before, or if it's something that is step by step, that that still, even though you might not have figured out, the huge overarching vision, you still feel like you're going in the right direction. And so I think vision is important to really direct your path and to really make sure that you're doing what is going to make you feel fulfilled at the end of the day.
Yeah. You talked about it not mattering how fast you go if you're
Hmm.
going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
I want to talk to our high achievers, our overachievers. Asante and I both suffer from the same affliction,
Yeah.
right? And as overachievers, it is do it at the highest and do it at the fastest. Is generally, the two parameters. Um, and when I first learned about stopping to check
Yeah.
in,
Exactly.
it's
Exactly.
counterintuitive. Right? Well, what is
Exactly.
that like for you, coming to this talk about stopping and pausing and reflecting as a high achiever? What is that like for you?
I went the wrong way one too many times. Like it was just like I got somewhere and I felt, this is it, and it's like, nope, I have to tap back like 3 or 4 steps and really like re-engage and redirect to make sure that I actually achieved what I needed to. I don't think that I learned that on the first time. I think I might have maybe learned that on the second or third, but it was some growing pain there, to just, you want to get something done and you want to get it done well and as effectively as possible. But then it's like, you get there and it's like, wait a minute, I need to rethink, I need to refocus. And
Mhm.
so it's the thing is for me not to take it too hard, take it as, you know, a learning step that I need to just refocus. It's not like a fail all. It's more of a, you know, refocus, redirect, and then you'll be on your way. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely was some some growing pain there figuring that out.
Yeah. Because as high achievers, we equate the achievement to our self-worth.
Exactly.
And on the one hand, we are rewarded when we do that, right? And there seems to be so much evidence because you get the accolades and the praise,
Yeah.
and and there seems to be so much evidence that suggests that we should equate our self-worth to our achievement and to our output.
Yeah.
But then we
Validation.
realize, yeah, right, we are subjecting ourselves to an output, and we are so much more, right, than the doing.
Yeah.
And for us as visionary women, this is certainly something that comes with growth, that internal growth, that maturity, when we are able to create a bit of a separation between I am and I do.
Do.
Right?
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
remember that
Mhm.
that conversation. Are you going to be defined by your work, or are you going
Mhm.
to be defined by who you are and what you exude and what you want to put out into the world? So definitely an important distinction to make, and one that I think that gets better with time, as you develop and as you really become self-aware and become more in tune with who you are and where you're going, that you
Yeah.
can really say, you know, I am such and such, as opposed to varying into, you know, I do this or I do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that I am, I do has caused me to, even how I speak to children is very different. I don't ask children, I never ask children anymore, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Mm-hmm.
Never ask them that question anymore.
Yeah.
Right? I ask them, who do you want to be when you grow up? What
Mm-hmm.
kind of person do you want to be when you grow up? And then I ask them, what would you like to do with your time?
Yeah.
And creating that distinction from an early age, I think, is one of the greatest gifts that we can give to children, because it is so very deeply ingrained within the just language and how society is created and formulated around jobs, functions, and roles, right? Whether it's
Right.
at home, it's within your family unit, it's at work, right? Our lives are surrounded by definitions, other people's definitions of how we are expected to show up.
Yeah.
Now, you talked about, being able to become more self-aware and to grow and to be able to first understand the who we are and then know how to show up in this world. And in that, we need to be able to speak up and say, well, this is who I am and this is how I'm showing up. Have you at any point in time experienced your voice being diminished?
Yeah, I would say unfortunately, there have been some cases where, yes, I feel being at the intersection of youth and female, that my voice has been diminished, because it's a sense of you're such and such age and then you're a female, which, whether you think that it's inherently so that females are docile or anything like that, it's like, you know, you really shouldn't be speaking up about something, or you shouldn't feel like you should be able to voice certain things, and that's both personally and professionally. So unfortunately, sometimes that has been the case, and then that spills over into, unfortunately, me then feeling like I need to silence myself and to filter and to, for fear of, you know, feeling silly or coming across as unknowledgeable or not wanting to rock the boat. It's like I need to, you know, maybe I shouldn't say this, maybe I shouldn't give this feedback. They, you know, they know what they're doing. I'm not as experienced, I'm not as knowledgeable, maybe I shouldn't say something. But really
Yeah.
and truly, we all have perspective, we all have experiences that I think we're able to share at some points, things that might help others. regardless of age, regardless of gender. And I walk forward trying to be a little more aware of that. And if someone tries to diminish my voice, then I let it be external and I let it not be me anymore, or try to let it not be me, myself, diminishing my voice anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And that speaks to so many things. And they're gonna get to peer into how we chit chat all the time, but we can go so much deeper into so many of those concepts, right? Because you talk about your voice externally being diminished, then your response to diminishing your voice yourself. And in 2021, when we did this, there was a really interesting concept that came up about the power of our silence and the intentional use of our silence as voice, right? And it wasn't about the disempowerment, right, that stopped us from speaking. It was about the choosiness of our words and how impactful will my next sentence be in this moment. And so I really wanted to pull that forward, because voicelessness is about lack of power, and it is about hierarchies that push down and subvert and raise up in other instances. And our choosing to never relinquish that power is not the same as speaking or not speaking. And I really want that to be, to come forward for our visionary women. We talked in one of our masterminds about, we looked at voicelessness from the perspective of people who can't physically speak, right? And we looked at the power of having voice. And in one of our examples, there was a video with persons who were deaf and mute using sign language to communicate. And what I found extremely powerful about this video is that they had subtitles, but no voiceover. And I thought, and I watched the frustration of hearing people having to actually read the subtitles with no ambient sounds, because even if you're watching, let's say, a movie in a foreign language, you can still hear the crashing and the, whatever is going on in the movie, right? You can still hear all the ambient noise. But to actually be in that world where all you have would be these subtitles, and to me, it spoke volumes. It was extremely powerful because they were telling their stories on their terms, in their way. And we had to stop our expectations and listen with our eyes. Right. And so, as we grow and develop in that self-awareness that you talked about, it really helps us to hone in the when, the where, and the how, right? Understanding now that my voice is precious and special and powerful, and hell yeah, I got something to say that's worth listening to. There's this biblical thing, this passage that says, don't cast your pearls before the swine, right? In other words, don't drop your wisdom. Everybody's not going to hear your wisdom, right? Don't just drop it all over the place, right?
Be selective.
Yes, exactly. Who's actually going to receive the message, right? And who do I deliver that to? So I find that so powerful when you talk about the self-talk. I am not as experienced, I may not know as much. I don't want to come across as not being knowledgeable. And I'm sure there's so many more visionary women at all ages, all stages, who experience that, right? And so I really want to encourage us to really tap into that who and speak from that place, right? Because it's the confidence comes from knowing the who, and then we speak out of that. I want you to now flip it for young people who are watching. I want you to actually now talk about a time, if you can. I'm totally putting you on the spot because this is totally unscripted. But if you can, think of a time where you did allow yourself to raise your voice and your message was received, and how that might have felt to you. Because I do want to encourage our young women who are listening, to speak, right? So can you think of a time that you've made a suggestion in a space where you may have still felt like maybe I'm not as, advanced as other people, but you still gave yourself permission to speak and saw some kind of change?
Well, I hope that this is not too little story, but recently, maybe a month or so ago, it was apparent to me. So we have church on Sunday, and we have a choir at the main mass, but we don't have a choir at the evening mass the day before. And so it was, for me, music is a big part of, the celebration and everything like that. And so I said, you know what, we should have something here too. And I went and gathered a few of, musically inclined friends. I'm not particularly musically inclined, but it's church. The effort is what counts. So gathered, a few, and it's like, we brought it to our priest, pastor, and we're like, we want to do this. We want to liven up what the mass is about. And, have everyone have a positive encounter. And, he was like, this is great. I encourage you. We want you to come. We want you to do this. And now every Saturday evening, we have our mini choir who is making sure that the assembly is lively and that we can have that special part of the mass that I think is so important. And we're, thanks and grateful, members are like, yes, this was a good addition. We like that you did this, has showed initiative. And I was really glad that it wasn't like, kind of any sort of like know your place type thing. Like, why would you want to change what we're doing or anything like that? It was very welcoming, and I was glad that we were able to bring something forth for the betterment of everyone. So that was maybe like the first thing that came to my mind when I think of just speak up and see what happens, and it can be a very, very positive response in return.
Yes. And I'm so glad that you've shared that. And I really hope that another particularly young woman, or maybe young in a field, right? Young in an experience, new to something, hears that, right? Because no, this is a church you've been going to for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So one of the things that I would pull out there is that you had relationship first, and you were able to speak out of the sense of relationship. And these are people who've watched you over the years, who've seen you develop and grow and flourish. And so just looking at how we create systems that empower our voices, right? And what it's like when we speak in spaces where the system is not there to amplify our voice. Right. And so what layers of change. And so this is where we see now, it may take, let's say it was somebody who's new to the church, and it might just have been taken as a complaint. Oh, will you now come? Will you know? Or, right? Yeah. Exactly. And so just looking at all the layers that then would be necessary for us to make those moves. So you take that example, and the next time you're in a situation where you want to speak up, just think, okay, how close or how far am I from voice amplification here? Right. And maybe, right, when we experience that voicelessness when we're new, sometimes it's because we're jumping straight to the middle, forgetting that there are layers, right, that create that amplification. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Right. Because I am not an acoustics engineer, but I understand enough to know that there's a lot of work that goes into amplifying sounds, right? And so we can think about it from that same perspective as well. So we take what we've learned and apply it to a new situation, as you've done so eloquently and so well in that situation. And I'm sure there are people, again, way older than you who might have thought it, right? Never said anything, never did anything, right? Yeah. And that's my encouragement to you and young people to, you see, as the New York MTA would say, see something, say something, right?
But also I think another part to pull out of that is those who are willing to listen and who are willing to facilitate your change. Unfortunately, some people don't have positive experiences with that. Some people don't. Uh, their suggestions or ways that they can make things better fall on deaf ears, or worse, it's as you said, seen as malicious intent or anything like that. So to have to be received is really another part of being able to give your suggestion or give your way to make something better as well. So I implore us as visionary women, when advice comes our way, or when there's a suggestion, you can do this and this will make whatever it is that you're working on that much better or that much more inclusive or anything like that, to be the receptive ear as well, in those situations, as much as you are the person that is being the one to give the suggestions as well.
Absolutely. And that's what the sisterhood is about. The sisterhood is about creating that scenario for amplification, and you talked about redirection and acceptance, and how those two things can coincide, right? Because we had someone on, I can't remember what day she was on, our Raz Designs, and she was talking about a teacher who chopped her work down, right? Her first time doing it,
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I was saying, well, that lesson could still have been learned and delivered more gently, right? It could still have been as strong of a redirection, so that we're pointing you now into the, where you need to be going, but still given with love and kindness and thought, and and more opportunity for that person to now look within and say, oh yes, maybe if I trim the thread or something, it would give it more of a finish. And so that's where that two-way street in the sisterhood comes from.
Exactly.
Right? That constant willingness to, yes, give, but also receive, in nonprofit, we call it a give get. I've worked with another organization that called it the ask give, and having that exchange is really, really critical. Now, you talked about this experience, and you mentioned you weren't sure if it was going to be too small of a story.
Yeah.
I think all stories that have impact are big, right? Even if the circumstance may have seemed relatively insignificant to, are we going to change climate change? Or, are we going to fix the world's largest problems with this? No, probably not. But you don't know who's going to come into mass on a Saturday and be completely revived and make a new decision in their lives, right? And so even those small impacts are powerful and worth mention and worth telling our stories. Why do you think it's important that we are the ones who tell our version of our own stories?
I think it's super important because I believe each and every one of our stories is so specifically handcrafted for us, and our voices are really the ones that can tell it accurately and do it justice. I mean, I think about I'm a twin, so up until a certain point, we had like very similar lives, going to the same school, same routine, everything. But our stories are by no means the exact same, even in that situation. So how much more those of us that are walking such different paths, that have so many different stories. And so if we aren't the ones to really tell it, to really own it, and to speak it in our own unique voice with our perspective, then who will really? So I think that it's important because it's our story to tell, our one of one story to tell, and in our voice we can really get our perspective across and be the ones to really initiate change that maybe only we can in a specific space or in our specific communities, you know? So I think quite important. And if maybe not the big stories, I know that many of our visionary sisters have written books and have, you know, this great accomplishment. But you don't have to publish, you know, a book or article. Just sharing your story or sharing a story with someone you're close to or someone in your community, because you know that it can have a positive impact. It can advise them to be better. It can advise them to not go a certain route because you know it's not going to end well. Anything like that, I think, is important, because we have that special perspective and experience that we can lend to others.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, it really is then about, it comes back now to that conversation on personal disempowerment,
Mm.
you know, because when we do tell our stories, the big, the impressive, the grandiose, and the small, and, you know, seemingly, you know, insignificant, and seemingly, because again, as long as it impacts one life, even if it's just our own, to me it's powerful, right? But you know, when we do open up and tell these stories, that is how we practice voice,
Yeah.
you know, as we share our own stories with the reality of the moment, you know, because maybe in the moment of the story, it wasn't about being confident. Maybe it wasn't about being strong. Maybe it wasn't about making the right choices, right? But it's ours to own and to speak, right?
Right.
And to be proud of whatever lesson came out of it, you know, for the good or the bad of the situation itself. And
Yeah.
so, you know, just, you know, to your points that you've made earlier, us practicing, you don't have to write the book, you don't have to do any of that kind of stuff, but us practicing telling our own stories, it
Yeah.
helps us to, you know, stand in our voice and to deepen our understanding of ourselves and our connection with who we are and who we're, you know, meant to be and how we're meant to show up in this world.
Yeah, for
Absolutely.
sure. I think about uh, well, I've written, I think, two opinion editorials, op-eds, and you think that you know exactly what you think or feel about something until you have to write it down and get someone to review it, and you're thinking, what are they going to think about this, or what are they going to think about that? Have I really expressed myself as best as I could? Am I really getting how I really feel across to whoever might be reading it? And it in those moments of writing and really getting what I thought onto paper is when it's like I need to be clear on exactly what I think and how I feel about a certain topic. And to your point about really it's at that point that you really think about things and that you really are able to express it, that, you know, it can be a little scary sometimes, especially if, you know, it's a decision you could have made or that you should have made, or something that you shouldn't have done, or you know, just wishing otherwise other than what happened. But it's yours, right? As you were saying, it's yours. And to really share that, if you're at a point where you're comfortable, if you're at a point where you're courageous enough, if you're at a point where you think that it can help someone.
Yeah, and I like that you pulled out. If you're at a point where you're comfortable, you're at a point where you're standing in that courage, you know,
Mhm.
because not every story needs to be told all the time, in
Yeah.
all ways, to all people, you know. And there's still wisdom that comes with
Yeah.
that. And so, you know, having measure to our extremes, I think that's another affliction we share. It's just being natural extremists, right? And having
Right.
to find the middle. And again, taking that from a position of growth and empowerment and not from a position of disempowerment from another. I am choosing to bring some measure to my extremes as opposed to, you know, well, I can't because they're going to cut me down,
Right. Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, we think here at Her Story, present company included, that when we are able to hone our vision and amplify our voice and stand firmly in the version of our story that we choose to deliver to the world, that this gives us an opportunity to live a life of victory, not just experience a moment of victory, but live victorious lives. So tell us, paint for us the picture of what comes to your mind, what imagery comes to your mind when you hear the word victory.
I think of gratitude and peace. I think uh, there's a saying I think that's pretty recent. A win is a win, right? But if that win is ill got, or you have constant turmoil after it happens, then what good is it, right? So that's where the peace for me in defining what victory is, or visualizing what victory is, comes from. But also gratitude. I think an attitude of gratitude goes a long way. We can get bogged down on what's not for us, what's not going well, and everything else. But when we think about what is going well and how far we've come and what we have achieved, even if we haven't gotten to the exact point that we think we should be at, there's still victory in that, and acknowledging that, I'm very thankful for all that I've learned and all that I've accomplished along the way to, the big thing that we all have, that we think will finally culminate for us, and that will make us feel, like we've really done it. So I think those two things, I think, really encompass what I think when I think of victory and being victorious.
Yes. You talked about a win is a win. And for a lot of us as entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs in a very heavily dominated male space, the coaches are male, the books are written by men, all of the stalwarts of business throughout the years tend to be men. And you see this attitude of, win at all costs. And as visionary women, we're starting to ask the question, must I win at the cost of my relationship with my children, my relationship with my spouse or partner, my relationship with myself? At what cost am I willing to win? Who gets to come with me on the journey? Who gets to stand with me when I win? Who do I leave to stand as a winner when I have left the post? We're asking more of these questions. I was used to something called a 90-day run in business, and looking at how unhealthy 90-day runs are, and yes, you communicate and you say to your family, listen, I'm going to be focusing on this for the next 90 days. I'm going to be out beating pavement. I'm going to be doing all this. I need your support. Yeah, you do that first. But again, at what cost? At what cost our health? At what cost our mental health and our physical health? At what cost our overall wellness? How many relationships are we going to tear down in that 90-day run? How many bridges are we going to burn because we're so focused on the goal, right? Yeah. We can't hear or see anything else. And so as visionary women, it really has come down to us to say, hold on a second. I see you. I get the grind culture. I understand it. I know there's a place for it. Yeah. But I want this life of victory that Asantie is talking about. Right? I want to have peace while doing it and after having done it.
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't want to be sitting down on my lush king size bed on my yacht thinking, right? Maybe it was ill got, right?
So. Yeah, no, and I'm glad that we're starting to ask those questions and really thinking about what victory feels like internally and what we want it to feel like. We don't want it to feel like loneliness. We don't want it to feel like regret, We want it to feel like it's something that has brought us joy. It's something that has brought us, very positive impact and such. So I'm really glad to hear that is where the thinking is going, and to continue that thinking for myself for sure. And where is it and what is it that I need to do to achieve, and how is that going to make me feel once I've gotten it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in doing so, in driving that impact, starting at home,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's where it brings everything right back to that full circle. Can I truly enjoy this moment because I know that I have shown up in my
Mm-hmm.
fullest, highest self?
Yep.
Can I truly enjoy this moment because I've amplified other voices in the process? Can I truly enjoy this moment because I've given space for other people's version of their story, even if it didn't match mine, on my perspective of their walk and their path, right? I've given that permission. And can we truly embrace who we are in these moments when we stand, and sit in our victory? Yeah, I think that you do bring back that point on gratitude. If we reflect on how we developed these moments of victory or this life of victory, can we be grateful for the decisions that we've made, the choices that we made, the paths that we walked, the things we said no to? Can we be grateful for those as well? Right. And really just zeroing in on those fundamental rudimentary principles on who am I and what am I here to do. And our friends at the Olive Branch of Hope have been really just phenomenal
Yeah.
at making the answer to these questions so obvious. you know we hear Leela's story, the who am I. I'm a Black woman dealing with a disease that I was never told could affect me. you
Mm-hmm.
know but what am I here to do? Am I here to just lay down on my bed and cry about it? Or am I here to get up off of my bed and do something about it?
Yep.
You know, after I've experienced the emotions and after I've given myself permission to be a human being, what's the decision that I make next? What's the next step that I take? Do I say, oh, they should really do something about it? That's for them to fix,
Yeah.
right? Or do I say, okay, what part of this is mine to take? And so, under the tutelage of these tremendously visionary women, we've had the opportunity to work and to serve so many hundreds of Black women across Canada and the Caribbean throughout the years. And to really build those relationships, to understand who these women are and what their circumstances are. One of the things we like to remind people is that when you have been given that diagnosis of breast cancer, that is not the only thing you're dealing with in life, right?
No.
The
Yeah.
rest of life doesn't pause. There is still so much going on. And so you want to be able to come into a space where you are seen and heard and supported and loved through all of the layers of what would be affecting you. And one of the things after breast cancer treatment that many of our women have come to understand is a real part of life is a condition called lymphedema. And so you may see some of us wearing these compression sleeves. And that's because our lymph nodes were removed or damaged or negatively impacted throughout breast cancer treatment. And the fluid that naturally would be processed through our lymph nodes now doesn't know where to go, and it gets trapped in all the wrong places, causing a lot of swelling and pain and discomfort. And you might think swelling, okay, well, swelling, hey, you put some ice on it and that'll go down. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about circumstantial swelling. We're talking about chronic, consistent swelling that recurs and worsens as life goes on. And so there's a lot of management that has to go into living a life with lymphedema long after your breast cancer treatment. And so we are here standing in solidarity with our friends at the Olive Branch of Hope
Yep.
to make sure that we can help. We know, we understand, we hear, and we are helping. And how you can join us by helping is going right now to www.heysisterherstory.ca, and you'll find lots of ways that you can get involved with us at the Her Story by 2114 team. Most importantly, right up at the top, you're going to see some merchandise that carries the Olive Branch of Hope's logo. Pop into the shop and buy something that you like, buy a gift for a friend, or give a donation, and we will send you a free gift from us at Her Story because you were so thoughtful and so kind to donate. We will send you that free gift from us. But anything you do to support Her Story throughout 2023, a percentage of everything we do and raise goes to the Olive Branch of Hope throughout this year. And we are so proud and pleased to be able to stand with these visionary women as they continue to support women of African ancestry who've developed breast cancer throughout Canada, Caribbean, and African diaspora. And so, Asantie, before we hop off, I'm going to ask you, do you have maybe one word of inspiration you'd like to leave with our visionary women?
Tell your story. Tell it as you see fit and as authentic to you as possible. And don't be the one to diminish your voice or yourself. Always have that confidence that you are an experience in this world, a good perspective in this world, and worth sharing. Absolutely. So I would want us to really, really think about that and carry that moving forward.
Yes. Tell your story. Tell your story with power. Tell your story with courage. Remember, courage doesn't mean that you're not also scared. Yeah. Right? Courage means that you feel the fear and you do it anyways. So tell your story, my sisters. Tell it loud, tell it proud, and be back with us tomorrow night. If you're watching the replay, you can just watch the next one. But if you're watching live, be back with us tomorrow night, March 27th, for day number 27. Holy crap, we're almost at day 30. And we can't wait to bring you the finale, our extra special day 31 finale that, wraps it all up in a nice, neat little bow. So look out for that as well. Tell your friends, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend, and you be there with us every night for the next few nights in March as we bring more and more of these amazing stories. Asantie, thank you so very much for being here and sharing in this moment with us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And to our visionary women, sisters, go slay your day.
First of all, I always thought that breast cancer was a white woman's disease. I didn't know that black women got breast cancer, and that was mainly because all the promotions featured white women. So I just thought, black women don't get this. And then, lo and behold, I was diagnosed with stage 3 advanced breast cancer. I thought after that I finished with the IV and the chemo that I was going to go home. I didn't know I had to take additional prescription drugs. And I went, and it was quite expensive. And I thought to myself, okay, what do poor people do? How do women that look like me, that is less fortunate than I am, how do they make it? How do they find the money to pay for this prescription, take care of their families, cover all their finances? That must be so difficult for them. And then I was at home one morning feeling, terrible after chemotherapy treatment. Couldn't get off the bed. It was terrible. And I thought to myself, okay, I don't want any other woman that looks like me to have to go through this alone. So when I get better, I'm going to do something about this. That started the journey of me and the Olive Branch of Hope.